back, everybody. Today we're going over the rifle that you see here, but also the mount. So the rifle, we'll get that out of the way, is a Century Arms C39V2, all-American made AK. So made 100% in America is one of the things that people like about it. It's got a milled receiver, which really has a good tracker. We'll get into that a little bit more. But the big news on this rifle is this, what we got right here, which is the side mount. The Red Army standard side mount for micro dot optics. So that's really the new thing. There's a lot of interesting things going on with the mount. It's a new mount. It's not the same style as before. So we're going to get into the rifle a little bit, sort of the features of it, and then we're really going to delve into the details on the mount itself. We'll get into the rifle itself here in just a second, but I want to get into the optics mount first because that sort of is the news here, if you will. So you can see it's got the Red Army standard billboard, if you will, there on the side. I know a lot of folks don't like that. And it is a two-piece design. So here's the big solid piece made out of 6061 aluminum. It is a milled piece, so very nice machining all the way around. The nicks and stuff that you see are all from me. And then we have our top piece here. I'll rotate it over so you guys can see. It is adjustable, so you can adjust the position of your optic forward and backward. However, you cannot adjust it left and right like some mounts out there. So the beauty of that is, and the reason it shouldn't matter, is this rail, as of right now anyway, is only getting put on US-made AKs. So I've not seen a US-made AK that has a sort of messed up in terms of left and right receiver mount on it. So all those that I've seen seem to be good, so it shouldn't be an issue as long as the actual receiver itself is good quality, but it is not movable left and right, but it is forward and backward. Taking the rail off is pretty simple, so we'll do that here, and I'll show you how to install it as well. We're just going to back these out. These are hex keys, as you can see here, I believe T25 or I25, depending on which company makes it. So we'll back it out, all the way out. And this bottom piece comes off and it slides over. So we'll show you sort of how it all engages here in just a second. But what you can see is that we have these locking surfaces, and everything here is very straight and milled. So it's very square as opposed to the traditional AK receiver. So the beauty of this and sort of the marketing hype behind it, which I do believe personally, is that your standard AK rail is going to get anywhere from 20 to 30, depending on the mount and the actual rail itself, 20 to 30% contact with the mount. So the majority of the actual rail itself is not contacting anything, and obviously not adding strength to the mount itself. The actual mount surface, I should say. This one here, according to Century, is going to give you 80 to 90% contact across the board. And you can see the wear pattern here actually is very even all the way around. So that's certainly a good thing. And the rails that it kind of goes into, both on the top and the bottom, are also being engaged with this clamp here, which I'll show you a little bit more here in just a second. So that's sort of the marketing hype behind it. And I can tell you, I talked to two of the biggest companies in terms of US-based side rail adapters, and both of them said the idea of it anyway makes a lot of sense, and they agree that the majority of surfaces are not being contacted with the standard com block mount, and the idea of it again makes sense. The execution, I believe, certainly as of right now, works perfectly well, and of course in years to come we'll find out for sure, but it definitely makes sense the way they did it, and that was sort of the impetus behind it. It is a modular design, so you can see this top piece comes off, and we'll show you that here to mount your optic. And while we're on that subject and sort of taking it off here slowly on camera, painstakingly so, it will take any of the aim point optics out there that take the aim point thread pattern. So obviously your T1s, H1s, T2s, H2s, a lot of the Holosuns like we have here, Vortex, Spark, Sun Optics I believe makes them, Sig Sauer makes a Romeo. I'm sure I'm missing some. The True Glow I believe also fits that pattern, the little True Glow microdot. But yeah, so you can see how it works there. So it's modular. I like the fact that it has helicoils in there, especially for the price point that this is coming in at. And I should mention that right there. The MSRP on this is $119 for both pieces, which certainly is pretty good. But the helicoils in there are going to prevent it from being stripped out, which certainly is nice. And again, that's your top piece. Right now, this is the only top piece that's available is for these dot style optics. I would imagine in the future, Red Army Standard and Century will be offering a different choice, but as of right now, that is what you got. To mount it, it's pretty much the exact opposite of how we took it off. And one thing I want to point out here is that this actual lug right here on the optics rail actually fits right under here. It fits all the way in close to the receiver, and that's just going to give you another point of strength for the mount. And then of course we have this piece up here that's going to prevent the optic from moving under recoil. So it does seem to be a pretty sound setup in terms of the engineering behind it. And also, of course, this piece right here is going to rub up against the back piece. So again, it makes sense the way it's designed. And you're just going to slide it on there. They say it returns to 0. Now, as of right now, I only have this microdot to test it on. And this rifle, with my eyes, with me, with Red Army Standard going down range, what we've been shooting with this rifle, is going to get right around 3-inch grooves because it's not a magnified optic. I would imagine, honestly, guys, the rifle probably shoots a little bit better than that. But with, you know, just a red dot type sight like this, that's about all I can do personally. So I did take it off a couple times, put it back on, and did not notice any shift in POI. However, if it moved like half MOA, I wouldn't notice. It would be imperceptible to me personally with my skills in this optic set. So that's how it goes on. And one thing I want to point out before we get into the rifle is that you absolutely can field strip the rifle with it on there. So that's something I got a lot of questions about. And you can see there is a little bit of a gap there between the top receiver. So again, if you're not doing this underneath the camera 8 inches, it's much easier. But take your top cover off, safety down, pop your spring. Your bolt and carrier do come right out. So you can obviously assemble it as well, just like that. So no issues there, and you can just leave it on and maintain your rifle. So that's certainly a good thing. Nothing too exciting here with the bolt and carrier. It's pretty standard stuff. If you do want to switch them out, I know some folks have done that. You absolutely can, but they're standard, you know, AK specs, so you can't switch them out. A lot of folks I know are using Polish kits, but whatever the case may be, if you want to, you can. But I see no reason to at this point. You can see we do have some wear going on around the outside of the carrier, but nothing too fancy. We do have the lightning cuts in there. That's been sort of debated as to whether or not it's a good thing on the internet. Whatever. I've not had an issue with it. So we'll move our bolt again, standard bolt. And you can see some wear on the lugs there. Right now we have about 600 rounds to this rifle, nothing abnormal, but seems to be going strong. And nothing, again, really to write home about or remarkable, but simple, regular AK stuff. And you can see there, no abnormal mushrooming or anything like that on the tail. At this point, there's a slight amount that you're always going to get. My arsenals have it, so, but nothing, again, crazy. At the end of the barrel, we do have 14 by 1 millimeter threads, so any of your standard AK pattern muzzle devices will work on there. With the rifle, it ships with the chevron muzzle brake, and the front sight, nothing too fancy on there as well. Adjustable for elevation and windage, standard AK stuff there. One thing you're going to notice is that there is no bayonet lug. It's been a point of controversy, and there's also no cleaning rod. Now, the cleaning rod, of course, saves a little bit of money to omit that, and the bayonet lug makes it legal in more states. So I think that's probably why they went with there, and the fact that most folks aren't running a bayonet lug. However, on the gas block here, we do have a sling mount. Gas tube there is vented on both sides. And moving on back, the wood on these rifles, both the C39s that I have, has been very good. Of course, it gets nicked up and stuff throughout use that you guys see here, but I've not had any issues with it at all. I like the palm swell. Seems to be good so far. Rear sight, standard AK stuff. Like most of the rifle, it does have that nitrided finish on there, so it's going to be very durable. It goes, of course, from 100 meters all the way up to 800 meters, which is very optimistic for the AK rifle. The receiver is made of 4140 billet steel. It is machined out of there, so you can see the lightning cuts here on the side. We have our safety markings for safe and fire, and on the rear of the receiver, C39V2. On the bottom, we do have our serial number as well as a little code there if you want to actually scan your rifle. I'm not sure what happened on that, honestly. I've never done it, but if you feel the need to do so, please do. We do have really nice machining all the way around on the inside. Really, there's been, you know, pros and cons discussed on the internet about these Century US made AKs. I've not seen a negative comment yet about the receivers. So these milled receivers just seem to do really well. The trigger and the springs that you see in there, I should say the springs are Wolf springs, as well as is the recoil springs, so very high quality springs. And one thing that's nice about these as well is that they have the Century Arms side plate in there, so there's no little paper clip that you have to deal with if you want to take your trigger out. So it's real quick, real easy, definitely something I like there. Moving on to the bottom, we do have this enhanced magazine release. That's something I like as well. It's a little bit wider, so whether or not you use your thumb to change your mags or the actual mag itself, no issues there. The rivets, as you guys can see here on the underside for the trigger guard, good to go. No issues there as well. The rivets look good, and nice open trigger guard for gloved hand use. And the trigger itself is the RAK1 trigger, I believe is what they call it. It's Century's trigger. It does have the C on the opposite side of what you're actually looking at here. And again, just like the receivers, there's been nothing bad I've seen with these triggers. They really do. They have a good break to them, nice and smooth, nice and crisp. They break right around 3.5 to 4 pounds, and it's already rounded off, which is something that like the Tapco triggers don't have in there. The reason that could be important is that it leads to less mushrooming on the rear of your bolt carrier, like we showed you earlier. So definitely, receiver seems to be good to go all the way around. The grip's made by Century, and this has been on some of the rifles for a long time now. So one of the pros of it is that it is bigger than the standard sort of peg grip that Comblock AKs come with. So for US shooters, most of us are going to like that. Some folks don't like the finger grooves. Truth be told, I prefer like a Magpul one. It's a little bit more comfortable to me, but this is definitely much more comfortable than like the Comblock ones. So sort of in between great, bad. So we'll just call it good. So nothing wrong with the grip at all. It works just fine. I know a lot of people do like it. The stock itself, again, is wood. And one of the beauties of this stock is that although we do have a milled receiver, we have a standard tang that also allows for standard aftermarket stocks to be used. So any of your aftermarket stock setups, if you want to use an AR stock or anything like that, you can certainly use it on this rifle, which is rare for milled receivers. So there are a couple others out there, but this is one of the few we also have on the stock. Comes with a sling swivel here to match up with the one on the front, so you can run a sling without having to adapt or add anything on there. And here we have both the original C39V2 and then of course the new one with the optics rail. So you guys can see the difference there in just how it's set up. And there's also one other big difference between these two rifles. So this was one of the first C39V2s to come out down here on the bottom. And at the time it had a 4140 steel barrel. Again, the barrel is nitrided on both of them, but the new ones, the V2s with the rail, I believe all of the V2s, in fact made in 2016 anyway, are going with the 4150 barrel. So both are nitrided, so you're going to get good barrel life out of it. And the 4150 barrel is, generally speaking, considered to be a little bit better, a little bit higher end. So that's certainly another good thing that you get with the new ones with the rail versus the old ones. And again, there's nothing wrong with the old ones. This one here is still running fine, but sort of a tale of two rifles, if you will. One thing I know some of you out there are going to be asking is, can I use my old Comblock side mounts on this new rail? The answer, unfortunately, is no. So that's sort of a big downside for a lot of people, because a lot of you, like myself, have Midwest Industries mounts, have RS Regulates mounts that we've been using on AKs for years. Shoot, I've been using them for over a decade. So, and I'm sure some of you guys have been using them longer than that. So some of your surplus Russian ones and stuff like that, they're not going to fit on here. So that's the bad news. But the good news is the kind of things that we talked about. It does seem to have a really positive lockup. Build quality is really good. Machining is good. 6061 aluminum is pretty good. The mount and the optic with the microdot here is coming in right at 12 ounces. So there's certainly some good things going for it. Another good thing going for it is that I talked to a couple big AK side mount manufacturers. You guys, I'm sure, can guess who they are. And they're both making mounts compatible with this rail in the next couple weeks to a month, depending on when you guys actually watch this. So you should be seeing them relatively soon, at least the test models. Whether or not they hit the stores in that time frame, I'm not sure. Definitely, I will be doing a video on them when they do. So the actual Red Army standard mount that you see here is coming in. The MSRP, I think, is $119. I've seen them on the street for right around $100 plus or minus $10. So they're not terribly expensive. And if you put, you know, like a Primary Arms microdot or the Holosun like we have here, you can keep your optics costs relatively cheap and still not have to modify your AK in any other way. So kind of, here's my take on it, right? I think it's an improvement. I do. The overall design, I think, is a better design than the standard Comblock AK rail. The fact that as of right now, when I'm shooting this video, which is what, October, beginning of October 2016, there's not a lot of options for it. That's a downside, no doubt about it. The fact is, I think sort of there's going to be a curve, an acceptance curve, if you will, because a lot of us that had the old mounts aren't going to want to get rid of them. And of course, the combat guns are still going to be coming in with them. So unfortunately, you're going to have sort of two systems, kind of key mod and MLOC, if you will. But I do think it's a better system, at least in my limited experience and my limited understanding of engineering. And it's just going to be a sort of a slow start, but I think once people start to use it and more accessories come available for it, I think people are really going to take to it. So that's sort of my take on it. Right now, sort of limited in terms of what you can do with it in the future. I totally think that's going to change, and more use will, I think, show it to be a pretty good design in terms of lock up and how solid it is and the return to zero capabilities. So that's about it, guys. If you have any questions about this or anything else, you can always post down below in the comments section. You can also post over at my Facebook page, as always. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed yet, please go ahead and do so, and we'll see you in the next video.